When I was a little kid growing up in the 60s, sometimes there'd be a cartoon and it might be Underdog, or it might be Mighty Mouse, or it might be some weird off-the-wall cartoon where some guy with a big black top hat and a big mustache and with that sinister laugh comes entering into the picture. Or it might be a black and white film and they freeze frame it and then they have the word villain and an arrow pointing, and then the audience boos. And then another one might point and say damsel in distress. Well, that's silly, because we don't need to see arrows pointing to people saying who the villain, who the good guy is, who the reluctant hero is. We don't need that. And when's the last time you went to watch a video and people stood out in the hallway debating on who the good guy or bad guy was? And it does happen in rare cases where that's the purpose of the film. But most of the time, a good story tells itself. The first thing is, don't be afraid of the word story. Don't become flinchy to the word story. We think when we hear the word story, that means some fib, some fabricated story, fiction story. All great truths, all great real stories are still stories. So desensitize yourself to the word story, desensitize the jury to the word story, and just remember that every good story tells itself. When you find yourself constantly reiterating a fact that you want the jury to hear over and over, you want to drive home that somebody's a villain, or you want to drive home a point that somebody was the good guy or the good gal, you're wasting the jury's time. As a judge for 9 years, every time I did a jury trial, I spent 5-10 minutes alone with the jury. Never discussed the merits of the case, but I would ask them pretty much the following questions. Compared to what you thought it would be, how significant did you find this process? And almost universally, they all thought it was substantially more significant than they had thought it would be before. What could I do to make the process better? What could the lawyers do to make the process better? And every jury said the same thing. I wish the lawyers would quit asking the same questions over and over again. It makes us feel like we're stupid. And I would tell them universally, well, it's because the lawyers want to make sure you hear it and they're trying to drive a point home. Well, think of it like telling a story. When you tell a story, or you watch a movie, you know who the bad guy is pretty much right away. Sometimes there's an O. Henry twist at the end of the movie. But don't shy away from the word story, and make sure you just tell the story. If the jury can't figure out who the villain is and who the good guy is, if they don't want to be part of the happily ever after in the end of the story by giving your client justice, well, then maybe it's just not a good story. Or maybe you haven't fleshed out the real truths of the story. So I would highly recommend that you just tell the story. Let the story tell itself. Just put the scenes out there, put the evidence out there without getting bogged down in minutiae. That's a subject for another day. But just tell the story, and don't be afraid to tell the story, and don't be so crass as to not judge or not trust the jury to judge the facts fairly. The villain is going to stand out. The good guy is going to stand out. The reluctant hero is going to stand out. And if the story tells itself without you trying to pound a round peg into a square hole, the jury's going to see it, and the jury's going to be a part of the happily ever after for your client's story. Thank you. I hope this video has been helpful. I've sat at the feet and studied with some of the greatest trial lawyers and titans in this country. I've learned from some of the members of the inner circle of advocates. And you can't be where I've been and studied with who I've studied with and shared a courtroom with the people I've shared them with for over 20 years and not know a few things about winning successful jury trials. It's time for me to share what I've learned with you. I'm retired Judge Kenneth Adair, and I want to help you be a better trial lawyer for your clients. Learn more at Trial.Win or subscribe to this channel to get regular updates about my latest trial strategy videos.